Hi everyone, I am Shudufhadzo Musida and I am shooting the Manor Women's Month issue. I'm so excited and this is a celebration of women, style and just being South African.
Let's start with the time before Miss South Africa, before we had like Shudu the image. And I want to talk about sort of your transition from being like Abigail to Shudu.
I don't think there was a transition. I think I've always been one of the same person, I guess. I think I read this book by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it speaks about how we all think we have freedom, but we haven't actually chosen the names that we're even called. And my first name is Shudufhadzo. My second name is Abigail, and my uncle gave them both to me. But when I asked myself, what would I actually like to be called? Abigail or Shudufhadzo? And I thought Shudufhadzo was something special to me because I've always wanted to be a vessel that God can use to bless other people. I've always wanted to be of service, and Ushudufadza means to, be of service in some respect. But my family still calls me Abby. My friends still call me Abby. I answer to both because they both represent parts of me. It's just that in my language, Madzina aya amba, which means that your name and what you're called determines who you're going to be. I'm just very lucky that both my names actually have very special meanings.
That's beautiful. What's the meaning of Abigail?
Father's child, God's child.
Interesting that you have this like pre-nominative destiny to serve, because if you look at sort of like your academic background, you're doing philosophy, politics, economics, and then you were doing international relations. There's this very sort of this almost like civil servitude kind of aspect to it. Was there a different kind of life you had imagined when you were first studying those things for yourself?
No. I think when I studied philosophy, politics, and economics, I'd taken a gap year beforehand. I grew up in a society where things are like predetermined for you. You could either be my village, you could either be a lawyer, a doctor, a business person, a policeman, a nurse, a teacher. Like there were very set things, but I've never really fit into anything that anyone tells me to be. And when I was looking at politics or PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics, it touched on different things that I was interested in. I really wanted to understand the thinking behind thinking, the 5 whys after the first why, I wanted to understand politics because they say power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And once you understand that about about human beings, you get to understand how things function. But economics, there's no free lunch. If you understand how money moves, what incentivizes people, then you get to understand how to speak to them. And then it connects to politics. And then politics connects to philosophy, because one of the lessons that I learned was, as human beings, we're inherently egotistic, whether we like it or not. So my professor made the example of, if a fireman runs into a burning building, right? If he dies a hero. If he actually saves the person, he's still a hero. And yes, he may not think about that, but at the back of his, I guess, human nature, or that inherent characteristic, there is a sense of self-serving, which is why we cannot pour from an empty cup. So those are the things that I've had to understand, to actually put a mirror in front of myself, to know that even when you want to do good, you're not always going to get it right. And I think politics is proof of that. A lot of the times you say, I would have done this differently, I would have done that differently, until you're inside the situation room and then you realize that it's not as easy as you'd like it to be. But if you ask yourself at least 5 whys, what is your why, your specific why, then things just transform completely.
What are some of your whys?
My why? My why is to know that I do not rise alone. My grandmother was actually on social grant, and we had a girl next door who had to raise her 2 brothers. My grandmother loved education so much, but social grant back in the day was like 350 Rand. She still went and bought that girl's school shoes. Our door was always open for her to eat with us and her brothers to eat with us like family. The moment you thought any different, there's something wrong with you, never something wrong with the person who needed, to be let into our family. And my aunt was the same. She raised all of us. She raised her children, and then she also raised all of us. And then you realize that life is not just about rising alone. It's not about serving yourself, but it's about serving community. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but to also raise a village, you need to raise that child to know that they need to, pour back into where they come from. So my why has always been to be of service, because I saw someone who had very little, someone who I thought was very hard, but she was just of service to the community. There was no one that could go to bed hungry if they walked through our doors.
So you grew up with like some very powerful, like especially matriarchal like figures around you. Were there also any people you kind of were looking up to, like outside of your family or your community as well growing up, or that kind of impacted a lot of what you want to do?
To be fair, growing up until I was like 8. Wait, actually, yeah, until I was like 6, wrestling was like my thing. So maybe Shawn Michaels, I'm joking. But Naledi Pandor, actually. I was 9 years old. I was sitting on my grandfather's floor. No, I was 8. And she was the Minister of Education at the time. And she, stood in front of Parliament. And I liked the way she she spoke. But I liked the way she spoke. I liked how she knew what she was speaking about. But for you to get to a place where you're like well versed on the things that you're speaking about, or the subject matter, or even to pour into the things you care about, I do believe that education is the foundation of that. She didn't stutter. I say a lot, but she just took her time. She was very confident in what she was saying. And as a beneficiary of like the work that she was doing, I was like, I like her. I want to become like someone like that, not necessarily the Minister of Education, but government, if you're listening. But I just really wanted to be the kind of person who I knew that I was extroverted until I wasn't. But I just knew that for you to actually speak confidently about the things that you care about, the foundation of it is education. And all the women that I've looked up to have taken their time to hone in on their crafts. Like you look at, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, you look at Naledi Pandor herself, you look at even Beyonce. She's taken time to study her art form. And I'm just so grateful to look up to women like that. And my aunt, her name is Cecilia, same thing. She would spend time at school, she's a teacher, making sure that the students never felt like they were unprepared for an exam. So weekends, she would go to work on weekends, and she would make sure that they feel comfortable and confident enough to write the exams. And she always had 100% pass rate for mathematics at her school. So I've just been very lucky to look up to women who've taught me the value of hard work. There's no free lunch.
You have spoken a bit about the sort of feeling of being an outsider growing up and also experiencing some bullying. Could you sort of speak to some of that, and also how that's kind of shaped the way you are today, or sort of the movements you've made in your life?
I don't know, I think how it shaped me is that it had to remind me that I am more than enough. And it didn't matter how many people would tell me that I was more than enough. I needed to tell myself that. So the power of conversation with self, how looking at yourself matters more than how other people look at you, or how you look at yourself rather. The power of self-love, boundaries. I think I wanted to fit in with people I was never supposed to fit into, or fit in with rather. And I just remember always feeling like I was meant for something bigger. But if I spent all my time trying to fit in with those people, I'd be nowhere in life. So I had to be okay with my own company. I had to be okay with myself. Bullying impacted me in a big way, because there was a point in my life where I couldn't even look in the mirror. But I'm so happy that I got to have like a full 180 of the whole thing, and write a children's book where I could have conversations with children that I would have loved someone to have with me, that I get to have conversations with them and get to know how they think and understand and respect them. They've got strong opinions, and I had strong opinions, but I think I spent too much trying to protect the adults in my life, when I just needed to be a child. And I tried to remind parents of that if your child says I'm suffering, if your child says I'm being bullied, it's not a rite of passage. You actually need to protect your children, because I do believe that bullying is a form of abuse. But I am so happy that I could turn it into something positive for children, that I could turn into something positive for myself, in the sense that if I don't belong somewhere, I'm very happy walking away. If I'm not comfortable in a room, I'm very happy walking away. I'm very comfortable now being quiet in a room. And if I'm being disrespected, I know that I don't have to be there. And I know how to say no. There's no negotiation table where I have to say yes. Because if I have to say yes to things I don't agree with, then I'm not supposed to be at that table. And being bullied actually showed me that, because I tried to be at a table that was never mine to begin with. That was never a table that was set for me. And when I look back now, that time alone, the books that I read, the conversations with myself, the self-awareness that I had to build is the reason why I can go against the grain time and time again and not belong and be okay with it.